Well, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here finally on the, I would say, very overdue book launch of Suresh Jagan. And this is something which has been giving me much joy in the last few days. And I know it's going to bring a lot of joy to the residents of Bangalore and people who've passed through and people who love nature. So let me just quickly set the context. What we're going to be doing is uh, I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing Suresh and Harini. I also would love to butt in as and when they talk because it's just too exciting to sort of be left out. So I promise to be quiet as much as I can. A quick discussion with Suresh with some visuals because I think it's something we'd love to see. We can't imagine doing Lal Bagh on Zoom, but you know what? Here it is.
The road thing? This is a road?
Kala, if you can just mute your...
But what if it's an old person? What if he's 87?
So, sorry about that. Okay, so, and then we'll see how it goes. So I'm just, if that format is okay with everyone, that's great. Is that okay with everyone? I'm going to take this as read. So let's talk quickly about this whole labor of love. I want to start by setting the context of Heritage Beku. We've been around for the last 3-4 years, and I can't believe it's been that long. But who is Heritage Beku? We are a citizen initiative, and we're a bunch of planners, of thinkers, of artists, of conservationists, of theatre people, of government people, all sorts of people who are very, very concerned about only one thing, which is passing on a Bangalore to the next generation, which has most of its history intact. So we really hope to pass the legacy of the city and not of concrete. It's been an amazing journey, and some of the focus areas that we've had has been the fun stuff like, having to interact and engage on this wonderful book of Suresh's. Heritage Beku has focused on natural, cultural, and built heritage. More than that, we've been also focused on issues around policy and information, dissemination, creating excitement, and also events. So I think we have a long way to go, but let's quickly talk about, talking about people like Suresh and Harini seems so redundant because everybody knows who they are, but this is Bangalore, an old Bangalore at its best. Suresh is so many things. He's such a well-known historian. He's such a well-known artist. And I was superbly impressed to know that he also was a principal of Chitrakala Parishad. But some of his articles, his work on WordPress has been tremendously tied in with the city. And his ability to be able to bring out in some way the soul of the city is really what this is all about. Most importantly, I think the chance to be able to talk to Suresh, being who he is, academic, artist, curator, and in some ways the soul of Bangalore. We also have another wonderful contrast, and companion to this conversation, which is Harini. Harini Nagendra and I go back a long way. We have roots in the steel flyover, and that has been incredibly a crazy journey. But Harini, apart from being professor at the Azim Premji Institute and an ecologist of such repute, is a person who may be very strong in terms of the academic focus on the ecology, the environment, and the green of a city like this. But I think her beauty is the ability to bring out, like Suresh does in a different way, its soul. And she does step forward further by engaging in its protection as well. So there have been times when, some of her inputs have really been able to save a lot of green in the city. And I thank her for it. So this particular discussion, being as it is with somebody like Suresh, who's author of this beautiful, beautiful book. And though I keep saying, I just say Lal Bagh, because that's just the way I think about it. The full name is Bangalore's Lal Bagh, a chronicle of the garden and the city. And Lal Bagh, I think in this particular discussion, and I'm not going to take away any more minutes from Suresh, the beauty about Lal Bagh, I think, is in the way it mirrors the city itself and the ownership that all of us have of both the lungs of the city, whether it is Lal Bagh or whether it is Cubbon Park. But such a feeling of anchoring and of soul, of being able to go plug in and revisit, but to walk through what Suresh has done, the labor of love in terms of the research, in terms of the focus, his own background, coming from a family of botanists and gardeners, there's a certain umbilical connection, which is absolutely marvelous. And it does come through. It comes through in the delicacy of the drawings that he has presented, in some of the older photographs, in the way that different portions and different bits and pieces of Lal Bagh come together in his memory, in his experiences, and in the rather exciting buffet that he presents to you from his own lens and his own mind and his own experience, which so strangely often mirrors our own. So there's a lot of aha when you read the book, when there's the journey is a journey not just of people from who recognize and remember the heritage of Bangalore, but someone who have felt the buzz in their soul when they've walked into the park. When they walked into the garden, I cannot use the word park. So having to read his book and having to understand and enjoy this and the Heritage Beku perspective on this, it gives me such utter joy to know that Heritage Beku is a platform that Suresh has chosen to launch his book, though the book has been reviewed and written about quite extensively. This is, I think, in some ways, Suresh's choice, and this is really where it all boils down and comes together. I can speak at length about Lal Bagh, and about the book and about Suresh and about Harini. But all I can tell you is, and I will button as and when I want to, and I hope that you will have questions for the author as well. But I do hope that somewhere, as we watch this conversation unfolding, there will be the magic of Bangalore that all of us so desperately want to plug into. So without any more back and forthing, I have taken a little bit of time, a little bit more than what I should. Suresh, may I hand this over to you to be able to talk a little bit about the visuals, the book, the presentation, what has captured your soul and what has brought out this book in the last few years. If after that, I will get Harini to jump in, and I look forward to that conversation as well. Does that work, Suresh?
Yes, thank you very much, Priya. Thank you, Heritage Beku. I can only add another word, Heritage Beke Beku. So this is a platform which I think everybody who loves Bangalore should be on. And I'm going to do something that I've not done before, like open the book for you. It's in a cover, and it looks like this is the new normal. So here you go. This is Lal Bagh book for you. And I'm sure I'm going to show you some of the images inside. I've not done an elaborate PowerPoint presentation because I thought it is very boring. I'd love to have a chat with Harini, who I really admire. And this is going to be a kind of conversation. And most importantly, I want to give you a gist of how this book happened. It happened during a walk. I have many walker friends in Lal Bagh. One of them, who I wish to name, is Mohan Narayanan. And I used to tell him a lot of stories when we were walking. And it so happened that he said, "Why don't you write a book?" And I said, okay. And it went on and on. And suddenly I put pen to paper. But one of the most interesting things that happened to this book was it went on a roller coaster ride. So I was obviously involved in too many things, which like Chitrakala Parishad with One Shanti Road, etc. But when the pandemic stuck, I had nothing to do. I was missing Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park. Both the gates were locked, and there was a half-edited book. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'm going to stick to this book and finish it, whatever happens. So with this, I kind of put all my material together, sat with my fantastic editor, Sarsija Subramaniam. She's not here today. And also my designer, Roshan Shakil. And it's there collective effort that this book is what it is today. And I owe them a lot of gratitude. But with this, I also want to say that there are a lot of things that have been edited from this book to make it very focused on Lal Bagh. And I feel that the narrative is not a narrative that is linear, but it is very multiple. So you start off with the story of the beginning of Lal Bagh, and in between you have a lot of box articles. So we told ourselves that not going to box these articles, but they will flow in and out. And this is what happened with the book. And the book has two narratives. One is me leading you on a walk to Lal Bagh, me telling the story from my own perspective of staying next to Lal Bagh, opening up my family album and picking out images from what my parents did, photographing us in Lal Bagh for many times, what my botany teacher did, possibly I painted my first landscape in Lal Bagh, and this goes on. So digging back and making myself the narrator became a very prominent thing and decision for the book. So this became very personal. So it was, I think, this uniqueness that gives this book a touch where a citizen, an artist, and probably a flauner of nature brings to this thing. And also somebody said, like, the book is what it is because you are constantly looking at beauty and aesthetics. And where do I see all this beauty and aesthetic? It's in Lal Bagh. Whether it's a dragonfly, or whether it's a beautiful bird, or whether it's the rain that has just kind of crashed into a tree. And so this is where I go there every day. So this has become my, as I told in my book, my spiritual real estate. So I'm just going to go and show you a few pages of my book. So are you seeing what?
No, you have to share the screen.
Yeah, I will.
And after you finish, Suresh,
Yeah.
put the host thing back at me at Q&A so that just right click
Yeah.
and make me a host again so I can. Awesome.
Can you see my book? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
So these are the book so opens out with a few drawings which I did of seeds and leaves, which are so diverse. And they talk about the kind of botanic cosmos that Lal Bagh is. It was a collaboration I did with my dear friend who's also obsessed with nature, Mandy Ridley. And I just preserved the drawings so I could inaugurate the book with this particular set of drawings. So, and it opens up with this fabulous picture by Claire Arney, who also contributed some of the most beautiful pictures in this book. And here is the entrance to Lal Bagh. The book opens out to the rock. And I go back, wear my art historical hat, and start looking at the garden city and its history from Kempe Gowda's time. Considering that you see the Mantapa in the background and you approach it, and you also pay homage to the founder of Bangalore, Nada Prabhu Kempe Gowda, whose image that you don't see very often, but it is here. It looks like a bronze image that I found and I reproduce it here. So it's a lot of research with images. So that is an interesting thing, and I had to kind of resurrect the sultans who we've often forgotten. We owe a lot to Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. Um, um, so here is a whole chapter about Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali, and you can see this fabulous landscape of Bangalore, which is like almost called naked territory. And you could also look at how the sultans, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, um, imagined a paradise in and around Lal Bagh. So we get back to the colonial enterprise and we see how Lal Bagh changes because of the cute trained gardeners from the visionary of Cameroon to Krumbigul, who takes over. Then you have the native directors, um, Rao Bahadur Javaraya, and you have Marikauda. Each one of them are very significant here because they bring in their own personality into how they shape Lal Bagh. If Cameroon was the, the visionary who laid out Lal Bagh and created the glass house and the zoo, etc., and made this very important colonial axis from the east to the west. And Krumbigal was somebody who opened up this botanical cosmos. And with this, I feel that there has been another interesting twist and turn with um, uh, the work of Javaraya, who has this very, very important gate, the West Gate, which most of you have seen. It faces Basmankuti. And here is a work where Mr. Javaraya brings an old dilapidated building into Lal Bagh and reconstructs this. So, and this is a very important thing for somebody who works with heritage. How do you repurpose heritage? How do you make it part of this landscape? Here are some amazing postcards from the Claire Arney collection. Her father, Henry Martin, had collected them on his uh, trips to London, and Claire currently has these postcards, and they are part of these. There's also part of the cover page of the book.
Yeah.
Lal Bagh 100 years ago, and these amazing drawings of people who work in Lal Bagh. The book is dedicated to everybody who's toiled in Lal Bagh, from the workers to the Q-trained directors to everybody who have envisioned Lal Bagh and sowed the seeds for Lal Bagh to become what it is today. Here comes Krumbigal's image. Incidentally, I should tell Alia that the man sitting next to Krumbigal in this photograph, I found this photograph in a relative of my father's home, and he was my neighbor, Mr. Krishnamurthy Naidu, and whenever I asked him, Uncle, what do you do? He says, I lay roads, because I was a kid, and he said, I just lay roads in Lal Bagh. That's what his job was. He never told me that he was working with Krumbigal. And his son, Suresh Prabhu, gave me this photograph, and that's how I started working on the book, Whatever He Touched, He Adorned, about 10 years ago. And here is the best pages, I can say, a kind of homage to the four pillars of Lal Bagh: John Cameroon, G.H. Krumbigal, and you have Rao Bahadur H.C. Javaraya and Dr. M.H. Marikauda. I think these visionaries have been acknowledged with this very special page made by Roshan. And I also got a lot of help from the family of Javaraya. My dear friend Harish Padmanabh was instrumental in getting a lot of images from his family archive. I'll talk about it when Harini asks me some questions. And I'm so happy to also share with you a picture of the an early picture of apples growing in an orchard. So that mythical apple tree which I was looking for, I found in Harish's archive. This everybody knows. I don't have to tell you anything. But it is also sad that the last two flower shows did not happen. So probably we need to rethink and see what we can do here. Maybe make this book into an exhibition and ask others to contribute also. So there is also a whole history of the monuments of Lal Bagh, which is part of the book. And I should acknowledge this photographer who has taken this,
Beautiful.
I think, this spread of the Lal Bagh Lake, Sandeep TK, who is a brilliant photographer and has worked very, very closely with me. I literally used to wake him up at 6 in the morning and drag him to Lal Bagh to shoot these birds. And this is the result of it. and he never regrets this because everybody keeps asking for this particular print.
It's
I
beautiful.
had this opportunity to bump into this amazing artist who contributed these images, and these sketches are widely used in this book to illustrate the monuments of Lal Bagh. And again, the best part of the book is to unlock this treasure trove of botanical drawings, which the Lal Bagh Library and Archive has kept in its archive. And it's an amazing, amazing kind of repository of botanical drawings. And it is one of the best uh, botanical drawings of that particular period. And Cheluvaya Raju is a master artist who's not been recognized, and this book also pays homage to him. So I stopped my sharing, and now I also open the open it up for discussion. So Harini, you can chat with me, ask me questions, and we can take it from there.
I'm just going to help on transitioning that. Thank you so much, Suresh. Some of it was just, you know, some of the journeys, the drawings, that beautiful, amazing photograph of the lake. I think that will stay for a while. I'm going to sort of get Harini to jump in, and hopefully with both of you in a conversation. You'll also have to make me host again, if you don't mind, Suresh. While we're doing that, I want to acknowledge two people who are on this group, and I noticed that I'm absolutely delighted because Alia Krumbigal, I still say Alia Krumbigal, though she has four hyphenated names to her credit. It's wonderful to have Alia here because there is a certain sense of legacy and a certain sense of continuity. I mean, you see the photographs, you see the previous book that Suresh, that you had written. There seems to be an odd sense of balance and a certain sense of rightness in her being here right now, listening to heritage going forward in some ways. So Heritage Beku Past Forward has been our tagline forever. So thank you, Alia, for being here. And I'm going to, also acknowledge quickly, we have Kusuma. Kusuma is here from the horticultural department. Kusuma is the deputy director of Lal Bagh and an incredible custodian, though Lal Bagh has stolen her from Cubbon Park, which we are still very sore about. But the fact is that when Suresh and I went to meet up with the horticulture team, the sheer passion and the ability to want to not just continue, but to widen the scope of species in Lal Bagh, to protect, to nurture, and to expand was absolutely riveting. So listening to Dr. Jagdish, who was the joint director, and to hear Kusuma with her perspectives on what Lal Bagh is and her passionate, driven kind of focus is something that makes us believe that it will go forward. Harini, you're on now, and just so looking forward to both. I hate the word greens, but both people with such a strong focus, emphasis, ownership, and fierce pride in the environment of the city, the Bangalore that we all love, the Bangalore that we strive so hard to protect. Over to both of you, and I look forward so much to your questions.
Thank you, Priya. And thank you, Heritage Baker, because this is such a pleasure and really a privilege to be here and be part of this book launch with Suresh. When Suresh sent me a copy of the book, the first thing I didn't read it first, but my mother, who's 85 and is an old Bangalorean, I gave her a copy of the book, and she's halfway through the book and she loves it. So, I guess it gives you a sense of how much this book talks of old Bangalore and how one can get really immersed in this. And to me, that is such a tribute to the way in which Suresh has written it and conceptualized it. Like he said, you're taking a walk with him. You really feel like this is a ramble, this is a private, there's few of you going with him into the park, which I've never done. I know I've got a couple of invitations on the times when I wasn't in Bangalore. But, it's one of those things that I've heard one must do, is to go with him into the park and just get those stories. So I think the book gives you that sense. And that to me is really something that is very beautiful about the book. I wanted to start. I do have a few questions, but my first question is, because this is such a good book and have loved your previous book on Krumbigal. So I want to know what's next, and I think that's something that many of us, there's such little on Bangalore, and Bangalore is from an environmental perspective. We're all waiting for more. So what's your past work? What led you here, and what do we look forward to next?
See, basically, I've been trained as an art historian and I kept teaching art history, but my passion and my love for nature is what made me do all these books. So, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I went to the Goethe Institute and I told them that I want to work on this gentleman called G.H. Krumbigal, they Google searched him and they couldn't find his work, his name. They thought I was lying. I'm cooking up this imaginary figure. And I told him that here is this man. He's German and he's very, very important. And Evelyn Hust, who was the director at that time, she said, okay, I'm going to grant you a small seed sum which you can use for this particular project. The project was so exciting, it went out of hand, and I had this very young colleague called Raghu Tenkalaya who worked with me to put it together because we were both super enthusiastic.
ವಿಡಿಯೋನೇ ಕಾಣ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ.
So, and in this
Can
process,
you just put everybody else on mute?
one of the last copies of this book which I have here, whatever he touched, he adorned, which is actually from his gravestone. And this was like a discovery. I hardly knew Ali. I think I had someone had sent a book. Someone sent me a message, Dawn Wilmot. I think you know Ali. And she told me that I'm related to Krumbigal, and I'm so happy that somebody's been writing about it. And when the book was about to go to the press, I got a few more images which I've added into the book. Then I think then the Lal Bagh got very excited because of the centenary of Krumbigal. I think they all were super enthusiastic to acknowledge his contribution, and I think Alia would watch for it because I think she was the focus of. I mean, she was like Krumbigal coming alive. I think she was. Everybody was. Everybody was trying to wine and dine her, and they were so happy that some part of Krumbigal is back to them. So that is the kind of love and affection we have for somebody like Krumbigal, and these were the memories, and these were the things that made this particular book. I already just to answer Harini's question that when I wrote this book, there was large chunks of it which was about Cubbon Park. My sweet editor said that, sorry, this should be another book. It can't come into this book. So there's a lot of material there, and which I already have this fabulous map, which I did for the IFA project called Project 560. And Biju, who made this map, hand painted it, every detail of it, was very keen that this map was public. And with this, probably in the few months, and if all goes well, and I have my own team to put this together, possibly a book on Cubbon Park if the stars align, as they say in Kannada. So that's it.
And I think I can speak for everybody without hesitation when I can say how much we're going to look forward to another book on Cubbon Park, because that would be also wonderful to have in hand.
Harini, you're just pushing me into the corner and saying, go write that book. Stop doing everything else.
I'm very impressed, in a pandemic. So I've seen there are two kinds of writers in the pandemic. Some who've just been overwhelmed. I'll say I'm frankly the latter. I have a book project that has been shelved for 18 months because I've just not been able to get on with it. And some who have just got on with it and written, and I have great admiration for that. So I think at a time like this, you've got out a book. I mean, hats off.
No, I should tell you something. There's another book that is missed. In the first pandemic, I had put together a book called the One Shanti Road Cookbook.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So I just walked from the kitchen to the garden. So these are the two spaces that really kind of nurtured us, sustained us in the pandemic. The kitchen, which fed us, and the garden, which kind of fed our souls and our bodies and minds. So somebody like me walking from the kitchen and entering the back door in a garden. And I can't help you how I keep thinking about my parents who sandwiched me between Cubbon Park and Lal Bagh. So I've kind of been partial to Lal Bagh because it's closer to me, but Cubbon Park is equally closer to me. So Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park and me in the center is, I mean, I can't think of anything else. I think that's where the stars align.
That's great. And maybe, I don't know if it's possible to share with people quickly, how does one go get copies of the other books? I mean, the one on Krumbiegel, is it out of print? How do you get the cookbook?
The Kumbiel copy is out of print. Probably when Alia is back in India, or she just plugs in, we could take chunks of it and we could edit it and put it together and see how we could publish it. The cookbook is uh, it's on its second edition. The Lal Bagh book is available in all the popular bookshops and in Bangalore on Church Street, all your favorite bookshops, which I don't need to mention, but it's also on Amazon. So you can go get a copy if you think it is worthwhile for you.
Terrific. So when I read the book, I was struck by something. There's so many good books on cities across the world and so many good books on Indian cities, including on Bangalore. But most of these, as you know, have been written by academics or scientists or journalists. And I find your book is very different. The intimacy of it and the way it draws you in is because, to me, is because you're speaking from the perspective of an art historian, a curator, an artist yourself. And I think that, so stepping back from this, I'm just wondering, to me, if we're living in the era of the Anthropocene, we're living in an era where we must make people connect to nature, otherwise we're going to lose all the nature that we have. And the humanities is such a powerful force for that, because through science and through reason, you can only communicate so much. And of course, that doesn't mean you don't need science and reason, but you need so much more, which comes alive in your book. So stepping back from this, just as who you are, having written this book and engaged with so many people over a very diverse career, what do you feel is the role of the humanities in driving this kind of a connection, especially in cities, because that's where we're losing the connect to nature?
I think my work has always been connected with nature in the urban context. Whether it's this painting which you see, which was done in 2000, which is still here in my house, it's always has something to do with mapping the city, trying to look at how I can engage with nature in very diverse way, either collecting a seed pod or a flower, or trying to find out where it comes back. Like the other day, I just picked up something from a broken branch. It was called Colvelia. It's also, I believe, called Dasara Gulmoho because it blooms during Dasara, and it's planted very strategically by Krumbiegel in Mysore so that the Dasara passes through this and these flowers keep dropping down. So there has been magic in this poetry, maybe a bit of romanticism and nostalgia. But what does an academic like me, who's supposed to teach art history, do with your own surroundings? So I've always been thinking that academics need to have a touch of everything around us, and especially urban culture, maybe something to do with nature and environment. So I have my kind of engagement with my students has always been to be open and sensitive to other ways of telling stories, not just a boring academic paper. So it can be from your heart, it can be very, very genuine. It need not have 101 notes, but it can really lead you to the source and engage with the nature that you're speaking about, writing about, etc. So this has been trying to rework and unwire myself and be a non-academic, but also be somebody as a sensitive citizen who wouldn't mind if you wake me up at 4:30 in the morning and say, let's go for a walk. But this connection is important for all of us, not only as citizens, but as human beings. If we lose the connection with nature, I don't think we're going to survive it for a long time.
Absolutely. See, what I feel, I mean, since you're saying students, teaching, working with students on any aspects of nature, unless you involve the humanities, becomes such a dismal affair, because we're all talking about the loss of nature. And there's only, art and poetry and some kind of engagement through the creative side, which in some sense can dispel that feeling of doom and despair and bring some connection, a realistic. I mean, one doesn't want to say everything's great, everything's perfect, which you talk about in your book clearly. The Bangalore you grew up in is a very different landscape from the Bangalore you're in today, but that doesn't mean we lose hope, because there's so much beauty still around us.
I'm also trying to kind of sow hope through this particular book. And whenever I'm with anybody, I always tell them that just don't look, engage with all your senses, slow down, pick up that eucalyptus leaf that has fallen down, crush it, smell it, or look at how the dragonfly sits, or look at what is flying above you, or look at that green barbet that's hidden in the landscape. So it's your what you hear, what you see, what you smell, and the air you breathe. I mean, and this is life, and I don't think we could disengage from this. I have seen a lot of people walking very, very blindly, talking about real estate in Lal Bagh, but that's another story. But they use the botanic garden as a jogging path. It's perfectly all right because it's part of their DNA and their ritual. But at the same time, a little bit of engagement from these citizens could make places like Lal Bagh and Kaban Park and many other spaces that the horticulture department has invested in much better places. Our lakes, our water bodies, our small gardens, our public spaces, etc. I think we need to show it more love.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of responding to your statement about people jogging past and or talking about real estate when they're in these places. I think it's also the way we are taught art. I mean, if I go back, some of us have been fortunate probably to I'm sure your students have, learning from people with someone like you. But if I think of my art experience I was asked to draw the Marlboro man and his horse driving off to the sunset, or my zoology when I couldn't draw squirrels and monkeys for life. So, I mean, I have an art trauma, though I have a deep art love, and I think that is sad because when you're taught in that way, you don't engage with nature in as creative a way as you could. But again, to me, this is one of the great parts of your book. But I want to move on because I see we're running out of time. The one question I did want to ask you is, I'm sure many people listening to this book are wondering, how did you do your research? And Bangalore is a data poor place. It's very hard to understand, especially about history in the past. What happened? How did people create this place? And there is a huge interest in the past 3-4 years in micro histories of different parts of Bangalore with the heritage stones or all kinds of other ways in which people are trying to explore micro histories. So how did you what's the history process you used for research, and how can people do similar things if they want to micro histories in their backyards?
There is a method in the madness. Harini, you know how difficult it is to get information in this city. Every time you want to ask for a paper or go to the archive in Vidhansauda, they'll ask you, PhD ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ ನೀವು? So it's always, like focused on some kind of academic research. But I am not visited the archive. And when I did the Krumbigal book also, I went with the book after I researched. That was my methodology. Go through the back door. Find people who have connections with the Krumbigal family. Get their albums. Get documents. Go through smaller libraries that can give you access to, and meet people who have information and have written about it. So there is information, but the problem is that it is not in specifically ordered or curated or archived. So what we need is an archive for the city, which I was trying to work on for a long time, focusing on the nature and culture of Bangalore. So that this is the result of what I've been doing. Like keep your eyes and ears open. Always put on. There are many people who told me that they're going to give me a lot of things, telling me that I'll give you these postcards, I'll give you this information, etc. And believe me, it didn't happen. But I knew what they had, so I had to go to other sources to get what they promised me to. And the postcards were given by people who had just collected them or they had it in their repository. They sent me to other places to get it. So I think going to the back doors, and if the door slams up in your face, there are many windows that open, and that's the result of this. Alternative spaces for information, alternatives, people who are not academic but have a deep interest in the nature and culture of the city gives you a lot of things, including my own family who lived around Lal Bagh and kept telling me a lot of stories about it, which is part of the book.
Very interesting. So I'm keeping an eye on the time. I have one last question, and I don't want to monopolize your time because I'm sure Priya and many others have questions. But history is a collection of stories, and you have so many different stories which are fascinating. From your grandmother and that search for the elusive apple tree, to Tipu and his ambassadors, to the British, to Krumbiegel, Javaraya, so many different kinds of people. For me, what I've okay, so little personal anecdote. I love Congress Kadlekai, and for the first time, I heard about the where it comes from. So I was very thrilled to read that one throwaway sentence about where it came from. And nobody in my family had heard of this. So I told everyone, "Did you know where it came from?" No one's heard of it. So I think there's just a lot in here. But do you want to describe some of your favorite stories? And I'll stop here. This is my last question for the day. Any of your favorite stories which you found when
I think one favorite story is of this eagerness of Tipu to send an ambassador to France and ask him to bring specific things, and a gardener. And it came through a Sotheby catalog because I saw this, exotically dressed gentleman and said, "Oh my God, this is something historical." And I started reading it and I knew that he's Tipu's ambassador. The other thing has always been trying to get stories that are connected to Bangalore. Everybody's heard about the Churchill's story and his connection with Bangalore Club, but I somehow dug out more information, and we knew that he was obviously had a very good time, and he was a different man, and he was not the politician statements, etc. But he was a soldier with a lot of free time, time to fall in love, time to read, and also be very romantic by growing roses and writing about it and sending his mother pictures or letters about the butterflies he saw here, etc. These are many small incidents that I put into the book, not to pepper it for the masala or something like that, but also connecting it. These small stories are like a quilt that make this book. So it's like this large jigsaw puzzle or a patchwork quilt that all but leads to give you this multiple experience of this multiple city.
History as a patchwork quilt. I think this is a great image that I'm going to hold in my mind now and probably use with copyright to you. Priya, over to you. This is a lovely conversation, and I'm sure we'll have many audience questions. Like I said, I don't want to monopolize. There's a whole series of questions I can have, but I think I should
please feel
stop
free
that.
to jump in, because there will be that first, first difficulty in that first question, I know. But this has been fascinating. Both Suresh and you come from, you have the same, you obviously have the same love, but you have such different backgrounds and such different training. But eventually, you speak the language of Bangalore, and that for me is so special. Some of the things that you've talked about, which is, Harini, you made a very important point about the whole focus on the environment or on green being so much of the gloom and doom. So being able to celebrate comes necessarily from the arts. And, Suresh, when you talked about experiencing with your senses, it has been amazing. And, one of the things that I want to acknowledge the conversation. And I think I am going to ask that question about Congress Kadlekai, but I think let's get to the bookstore and buy it and figure that one out. But that's an interesting story, which I personally loved as well. If you talked about, Suresh, feeling the park from your senses. And I think sometimes we miss that. You juxtapose that with the conversation about people walking with their head down, talking real estate or whatever. It seems almost insulting to a park not to be able to completely imbibe it, completely inhale it in some ways. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the consumption, if I can use that word, of Lal Bagh in the here and now, and what you would like it to be. And I wait for the next question. If I can just park that for a second, can anybody just put up a hand? I think Prasad has got a question.
Has a hand.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to let Prasad go with that. But if you can quickly answer mine.
I think I envision an information center for young people and people interested about the park, where people could come and plug into information about the history of Lal Bagh or Cubbon Park for that matter at the horticulture department. And they could possibly, which gives you not only information, but maps, ways of walking in the park, information, maybe other things around the Lal Bagh itself would make these places more engaging for younger people, the more tech savvy people who come and they could just scan things. I think there's already some scanning system happening, but curating information which could make a walk or just a visit to Lal Bagh more engaging. There are a lot of tourists who come to Lal Bagh, but there's nobody to guide them. So I think this could be an important thing where they could talk about what is the significance of the Westgate and Javaraya? What is the significance of Marigauda? Who planted this particular tree? What is the story of Cameroon? When was the glass house extended? And all these things become a very, very interesting thing if there is a curated kind of engagement in a space where information can be put together in maybe multiple languages, English, Kannada, Hindi, etc., etc.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And I think that will segue into our treasure hunt. Suresh, I think that you have promised to organize a treasure hunt. You've got all sorts of things lined up. So whoever's here, please be ready for that, because that will be a physical event. That'll be wonderful. Thanks, Suresh, for that, because that's a real need and a real the next step that could happen. I'm going to ask Prasad if he could just step up with his question. Prasad, can you unmute? And Suresh, you still need to sort of pass the host back at me in case I need to do any.
I need some.
Just right click and make me host.
Okay.
More and make me host. Prasad, over to you while Suresh does all this high-tech stuff.
Thank you, Priya. What I was asking Suresh was, all the best books are made into films. How about making this one into a beautiful documentary, either by asking the BBC to partner it, but doing something that, the younger generation is so visually oriented. More than reading a book, they want to watch a documentary film or a proper film. And this could make a great film, a walk through the park and the side stories, the histories. Why not think of getting a documentary done, Priya? You could approach one of the big filmmaking companies that do it. I mean, BBC would, I'm sure, be very interested in doing something like this. We should try and convert this book into a film for posterity. It could be something that every tourist could watch before coming to Bangalore. And, it would be, a very wide audience. That's really what I wanted to say.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Prasad, what a great idea. And I think we should work with the Department of Horticulture. And we've got Kusuma here, and I'm sure Mr. Kataria, who's the Secretary of Horticulture, was also supposed to drop in. But that's something we should take forward. Moving on from that conversation on consumption of information, we really need to get with the program. And perhaps this should be it. I'm very excited about the idea, but I would leave it to the author to figure out, what he would like to do and how we can help him do that. Suresh, what do you think?
I always wanted to do this, but I think I need support and budgets that could help me put all this together.
Yeah.
Obviously, it could be free and it could be downloaded at no cost and distributed. I think I just have to ask a friend to come and help me with trying to navigate and make you the host. So it needs...
Don't worry, we can work with this. Absolutely no problem. So it's just, you just have to right click on my name and just under more, just make me host. That's it. But don't worry, as of now, there's just no issue. While we're doing that, Suresh, just a quick question. Who's the next? I'm just trying to see who's got the hand up. At this point, I think there are some, I can't see anyone who has a question. So I'll quickly.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much. So I'll quickly ask the question, if I may, while somebody is, getting on to the question, if there is. One is that, if you look at books like, The City Beautiful from T.P. Sarade, so if you look at books on Bangalore or on city or on history, there has been some kind of a resistance. So, it's a book that you keep on a coffee table. You take it, you read it in bits and pieces because of what you resonate with. But in the last few years, I have seen, I don't know whether it's a function of getting older or whether it's a greater sense of imagined loss. that the city brings us, that, you know, there's a greater need and an appreciation for books like this, which talk about what is the here and now and what needs to be preserved. So do you think that there is, I mean, of course, there are two things which have come out of this meeting. It looks like you have no choice but to move quickly into your next book on Cubbon Park. That has been confirmed by Harini. And you have no choice but to look at your possible film or a documentary, which is what Prasad Bidapa has talked about. So I think that's fantastic. But on this issue of, and I'm sorry to use the word consumption, it's such a crass word in context of something so utterly beautiful. You do know that even the Heritage Beku website, the picture is of the temple and the rock. You know, if you go and have a look at it, it's in the sunset, because it's a picture that's so evocative of Bangalore. So what are your thoughts, Suresh, on being part of a 3-year journey and looking at a slightly more hungry Bangalore, wanting to absorb something like this? Alia, the next question is yours, by the way.
My thoughts are very clear, and I'm sure if my team can come together, and I have some friends like Ashok and Sandeep who are into filmmaking and photography, we can edit a book on Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park in the next couple of months and put in bits and pieces of this book so that it could go online on YouTube or people could download it. That could be easy. But what is more important is that there has to be more research. There has to be more investment in people like me, a very, very small organization like One Shanti Road, who's trying to do this and make it accessible to people, more investment, more, encouragement. That could be my request through all these patrons. And this, incidentally, the book is possible because of 3 important organizations: the Indo-American Hybrids, Swasa Homes, and also Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies. Without them, this book would not have been possible. I'm very, very grateful to them, and if it's so encouraging to see that people who are connected with nature are supported the publishing of this book and made it what it is today. Because printing it with such high quality, using the right paper and the right size also. I did not want to make it this big coffee table book. I want people to take this on a walk and hold it in their hands. There's a paperback edition also. Now I'm advertising, but this is how it was made.
No, you're not. People need to know how to get there. And you've made such an important point, Suresh. You've talked about, the backing that it needs. It goes back to the old days where you needed, the word is appropriate or not, it really patronage, because not everything will go onto a bestseller list and, do all sorts of exciting things because of, some salacious content. But you need books like this to celebrate and preserve and, in some ways take forward the core, the heart of the soul of the city. So I in fact did speak briefly with Rohini. She was caught up and she says, I'm not so conversant on Lal Bagh, but I know she's happy about, supporting this book in whatever way she can. And it is organizations like the ones that you mentioned who understand that this is also part of their giving back, not so much for their organizations, but for their own sense of sustenance for the city. So I really hope, you make a very important point, Suresh. I hope that we are able to see several more people like this who understand that this is legacy. And by investing and supporting this, you are really putting forward not just your own legacy, but the legacy of a city that needs to be in some ways nurtured and not concretized. So yeah, thanks for that perspective too. So I see some interesting stuff happening, and I know that we have 5 minutes before we wrap up. Harini had a question, but I'm saying please do come in. Alia and Kusuma, since I don't see any hands up, anybody with a thought. Alia, would you like to, you have a very close connection. Would you like to be able to ask Suresh a question about this?
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah? You can hear me. I have no questions because I just trust Lal Bagh in all your hands. It is when I go to Westgate and I stand there just for a moment and I breathe and I just walk up slowly. Lal Bagh is such a place, and I want everyone to understand it and to see it. You know, there's so much there, it's so diverse, and I hope somebody's going to save me a copy because I can't get it from the UK. I have tried to say, and I'd like it signed as well, please. But yes, it's Lal Bagh is Bangalore, Cubbon Park. You know, I miss it. I miss it so much. But I shall be back soon. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
I hope so too, Alia. You know, the connection, I could not ask you a question. So I think I will request Suresh to keep a signed copy of the book for you when you come in. And
thank you.
That's sort of taken for granted. Of course you should. And I'm going to let Harini have the last question. And anybody else, please feel free to jump in, have a thought, have a comment, please do jump in. But over to you, Harini.
I just, you just wanted to follow up on your question, Priya, and Suresh's response about consumption of the park. And literally, I just wanted to end with that last note that some of the interesting research we recently did on Lal Bagh and different parts of Bangalore found that there's so much foraging that still goes on in the park by people who visit it, including the people who keep it clean, but also so many visitors from outside, of wild greens of various kinds, which are used in cooking and recipes. So one of the things we have been doing is trying to collect all these recipes and these plants and identification and release this as a little open source book so people can go foraging themselves with the disclaimer that, please do this with a local expert who knows which plants to collect. But I'm just curious if, so I'll just end on that because Suresh, you've been doing all these walks in Lal Bagh. Have you seen people doing the foraging? Because it's literal consumption of the park. Wow. But it's consumption in a way that is so different and so intimate compared to the consumption that is talking on the phone and ignoring the park.
Yeah.
Harini, I just want to say that I've made friends with somebody who comes into the park and has some system where he harvests the grass that is growing because of the rains on the area which is not kind of landscape, and uses it for its cows. So I told him, how long have you been doing it? He says from his grandfather's time. So it continues. And I've seen people plucking mangoes, fruits. I've even picked up a few fallen fruit and come home myself and done something with it. So there is a place for it to happen. I think it makes the park alive. And seeing other people like the bird watchers and people like Mr. Tiruvadi who takes people for a walk is really heartening. It's again making us believe that this park is there. And I just want to read a small paragraph, if I may, Priya, from the end of the book, which kind of puts everything together. Is Lal Bagh is ever changing through the seasons. We are biologically wired to connect to nature. It is our womb, our comfort zone, and our spiritual real estate. If this garden is an ecosystem, it brings to our notice the imbalance of our reality outside its walls. I even now stop to admire the beauty of the tree-lined avenues and the verdant parks. Beyond the nostalgia of times gone by, and as the city becomes an adjective, Bangalore, we enjoy the shade today because someone planted a tree long ago.
Yes.
Take a deep breath. You are still in this eclectic botanic cosmos. This garden in the middle of the city is paradise, a resort for the community, a temple for the mind, spa for the body, and clinic for the soul. It is here that we can safely place our hope when all else is lost.
Amazing. I'm so glad that you read that, Suresh. I really am, because that for me was some, the icing on the cake, really telling you why you're doing this. Thank you for that. And I'm going to jump to Kusuma. I'm very happy to hear from Kusuma. You might.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Priya. Actually, my video is not proper. That camera is not working, so I'm not switching on the video. Thank you, Jairam sir, and congratulations too for having this book writing for. I know that writing one book, it is not that easy. You have to collect the source from many. I mean, collect the information from many sources, and I think you have dedicated your most of the time for that. And really thankful to you for writing this book for us, especially Lal Bagh. And it is basically, you know, that Lal Bagh, Harini madam raised one question saying that some we can use from the Lal Bagh, that will be very good. As you mentioned, it is the live to have such kind of activities. But I will, it is a small corrections. Few things okay, like grass and all you mentioned, okay. But see, when lockdown was there, we can see the so many blooms, especially flowers, we can see there. But when again the walkers started, most of the species
Kusuma, we lost your sound.
flowers also. So
Kusuma, we
that
lost
should
your
not
sound.
happen actually. So see, one educating is one thing, but and many species are there, which is very useful species also is there available in the Lal Bagh, and they'll evacuate. That is happening actually. And a few species also, like flowering species, we cannot see the flowers blooming. When it is a bud only, they'll pluck and they'll go off. Many of the workers they do though. Please don't do that, because on conservative part of view part, it is very difficult to have the multiplication aspects also if you are cutting that. So it is better use some few which is not very useful, and it is plenty, but thing which is not rare, and some species, no, Bainia, some species are there, that is only one tree in Lal Bagh. Some people will come from Manipur and that area, they use for medicinal, it seems. They were plucking the sprout only, they were plucking. So once I shouted on them, why you are plucking? Like that it happens. So it is our all responsibility to preserve and conserve the species. And many species like Dinospora, Contianum is there, and Cassia muscata is there. Those all are very rare species which is available only one plant in India. So that kind of plants, and the baobab tree also, you can see it is 150 to 200-year-old baobab tree, and that is really wonderful tree. Like that, so many, it is really many species which is not there anywhere, which is there in Lal Bagh. So
Got it.
that we need to conserve.
That's true.
Conserve it. Yes,
Kusuma,
we need to conserve it. We need to propagate it. Okay, thank you. Once again,
very good inputs. And Kusuma, I think you have
yes,
demonstrated exactly what I talked about you earlier, which was
yes,
not just that, we are looking at celebrating beautiful botanical gardens, but we're also talking about preserving. So this is such an interesting back and forth, where we're saying, we talked about consuming in a different way. Harini talked about something else, and you quickly stepped in to say, hey, please don't consume my delicate species because they're only one of its kind. So thank you for protecting your park, and that's something we'll keep in mind. Kusuma, your audio has gone off, so I will mute you for a bit. But thank you so much for those inputs and for your passion for the park, which clearly shows each of us have a different perspective. I'll have to stop you. I'm sorry, because your audio is completely gone. So we will have to stop. I'm so sorry. We're also out of time. I think, yes.
Okay.
All right. So we will, Kusuma, thank you once again. Let's get back to hope, I hope we've all had a great discussion. I'm also very, very keen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, Kusuma. So your line was off. So let me just sort of quickly summarize. Kusuma, if you could just mute, there's some problem with your line. So anyway, but just to quickly summarize, we've had a great discussion. For me, it's been something that I truly am so glad to be here and part of this moment in terms of reading about something that I love so much and reading about it from a perspective of such diverse, such a different kaleidoscope of perspectives that makes it so special. And Suresh, thank you so much for taking out 3 years of your life to give us something of such value. And Harini, for the things that you do, whether it's City or Canopies and all the books that you write and that secret little penchant that you have for the Bangalore Detectives Club, which we'll talk about later. You know, two of you are huge pillars in not just the information that is needed to, but also what is needed to protect our city. You know, I will end with gratitude to Suresh for his labor of love and for the fact that we have something to guide us when we look at what we need to do for our beautiful Lal Bagh and for our beautiful city. For some of the wonderful thoughts that have come in terms of the other book on Cubbon Park, on having a documentary, on looking at different perspectives of the book, the incredibly interesting conversation about consumption that was so beautifully sort of countered by Kusuma, which I thought was really cute. And the fact that we have many tomorrows with our city because of books like this, because it's books like this, Suresh, with its whimsicality, its delicacy, its depth, its storytelling, its ability to talk about so many different aspects of it. It's like, you know, being in a buffet and putting different things together and really having a blast with it, but creating something of great beauty. This helps, and for Heritage Beku particularly, to be able to have something like this as a repository to grow on and a platform to build on is really amazing. So thank you for doing this. And for Harini, who gives us the structure that allows us to keep building, and a lot of tools to make sure that this does not get affected, that this space and this time and this green has all the reasons that we must preserve. For Bangalore that we want, and I'm going to end with a great thanks to everyone who has been here on this talk. We've exceeded by 9 minutes, my apologies. But one of the things that I want to end with, and I always hope that Heritage Beku and all of you here are able to focus on that. Jacques Cousteau said, and I say this several times because I think that defines who we are, that we cannot love, we cannot save what we do not love, and we cannot love what we do not know. Somewhere the journey of Heritage Beku, the journey of yours, Suresh, of yours, Harini, and so many people here, has been about exploring those three important perspectives: saving, loving, knowing. And the knowing journey is what is going to impel so many people to do something about loving and perhaps about saving. So thank you once again, and have yourselves a very good evening, everyone. And Suresh, you can have the honors of saying bye-bye, and Harini, you too, before we log off.
I just want to say one thing, apart from the thank you for inviting me. Please go buy a copy of the book immediately, except for Alia, who can't.
Just don't wait. Go to Blossoms, go to Church Street, go and pick this up and do this quickly. This is for your city, and this is a beautiful book that you will treasure. So please do.
Okay, thank you, Priya. Thank you, Harini. Thank you, Alia. This is the icing on the cake. I mean, this encouragement will really push me to do what all I have to do in the next few years.
Wonderful.
From
Thank
the bottom
you
of
very
my
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. And don't forget all the promises that you made. Bye, everyone. Have a great evening.